You begin with something you rarely question. You assume you are a stable self. You say, I, as if it refers to something clear and consistent. Yet when you examine this I, it begins to fragment. It turns into thoughts that change, roles that shift, memories that fade. The certainty weakens the moment you look closely. This is where Ibn Arabi enters, not as a mystic offering reassurance, but as a thinker who challenges the logic of identity itself. He asks whether the self you protect has any independent reality, or whether it is only a temporary structure shaped by perception and thought. His question is simple, but difficult to ignore. If the self is unstable, what exactly is doing the knowing? And if the observer itself is uncertain, what does it mean to know anything at all? Ibn Arabi lived in a time of intense intellectual disagreement. Theology, philosophy, and law did not support one another easily. They often conflicted. He studied all of them deeply, without treating any single discipline as final. Each, for him, was an attempt to understand reality, not a complete explanation of it. This matters because his ideas were not reactions born from rebellion or emotion. They emerged from careful reasoning across competing systems of thought. He did not reject reason. He tested it. He followed it as far as it could go, and then observed where it could no longer proceed. His work feels demanding because it refuses simple conclusions. If reason has boundaries, how do you recognize the moment you reach them? You are used to thinking of knowledge as accumulation. You learn more, remember more, explain more. Ibn Arabi questions this model. He asks whether understanding grows by adding information or by clarifying what is already assumed. He draws a distinction between knowing facts and recognizing reality. Concepts, for him, are tools. They help orient thought, but they do not contain truth. They point without enclosing. This does not weaken the intellect. It places it within a larger structure of awareness. Knowledge becomes provisional rather than final. You still think, but you stop mistaking thought for completion. If every concept is limited, how can truth ever be complete? One of Ibn Arabi's most discussed ideas is known as the unity of existence. Philosophically, it is not a denial of difference. It is a question about independence. Things exist, but not on their own terms. Their existence depends on a single reality that is not one object among others. This challenges simple divisions between creator and creation without erasing distinction. Difference remains, but separation is reconsidered. Reality is one in its source and multiple in its expressions. This is not poetic language. It is a logical claim about dependence. If all existence depends on one reality, where does separation truly begin? You might expect Ibn Arabi to place the human being at the center of existence. He does not. Instead, he treats the human as a comprehensive question. Humans can recognize multiple levels of reality, but they do not own them. Awareness does not grant authority. It grants responsibility. Human significance lies not in control, but in receptivity. You are not central because you dominate, but because you can reflect, understand, and misinterpret. This reframes meaning itself. Responsibility becomes attentiveness rather than power. If meaning arises from awareness rather than authority, what defines responsibility? Ibn Arabi frequently acknowledges that language fails. Not because reality is unclear, but because language divides what is not divided. Words require distinction. Reality does not always comply. This creates tension. If language becomes too precise, it distorts. If it becomes too vague, it confuses. Ibn Arabi writes within this problem, not outside it. His complexity is not meant to impress. It reflects an awareness that clarity always risks simplification. He writes knowing that no formulation can ever be final. When language both reveals and obscures, how should it be used? Ibn Arabi also addresses religious difference in a way that unsettles rigid certainty. He argues that sincere religious paths aim toward the same reality, though they describe it differently. This is often mistaken for relativism, but it is not. He does not claim all beliefs are equally correct. He claims all perspectives are necessarily limited. Difference arises from viewpoint, not from truth itself. Conflict begins when a partial understanding claims completeness. Certainty turns into exclusion when it forgets its own limits. Conviction is not removed. It is disciplined. Belief becomes accountable to humility. If perspectives differ by necessity, how can certainty avoid becoming exclusion? Many scholars strongly opposed Ibn Arabi. They believed he blurred distinctions essential to theology and law. These criticisms were not superficial. They were grounded in real concerns about clarity, doctrine, and authority. Ibn Arabi did not dismiss this resistance. He treated it as part of the intellectual process. For him, discomfort often signals an encounter with conceptual limits. Not every challenge is an error. Some challenges reveal where thinking has become rigid. When an idea disturbs established structures, does that indicate error or depth? Understanding Ibn Arabi does not require withdrawal from ordinary life. It changes interpretation, not action. You continue to act, but you hold identity more lightly. Intentions matter more than outcomes. Certainty softens into attentiveness. You still make choices, but you are less invested in defending a fixed self. Action becomes less about affirmation and more about alignment. This is not passivity. It is disciplined awareness. If action continues without rigid identity, what motivates choice? Calling Ibn Arabi the greatest Sufi mystic risks misunderstanding him. Greatness depends on comparison, and his philosophy undermines comparison itself. He does not seek authority or finality. His significance lies in how thoroughly he questioned assumptions shared by followers and critics alike. He did not offer a system to inherit. He offered a method of inquiry that resists closure. His influence cannot be measured by dominance or status. Can influence be measured without turning insight into hierarchy? You return, finally, to the opening question with less urgency. Not because it has been answered, but because it is now understood differently. Ibn Arabi does not replace old certainties with new ones. He exposes the structure that produces certainty itself. Knowing becomes recognition rather than possession. Thought continues, but it no longer demands final answers. Inquiry becomes stable without becoming fixed. You are not left with confusion, but with coherence. If clarity does not require final answers, what remains to be resolved? You began by assuming a self that needed confirmation. You end by recognizing awareness that does not require defense. Ibn Arabi does not erase identity. He loosens its grip. The I continues to function, but it is no longer mistaken for the source of truth. Understanding shifts from control to recognition. Questions remain, but they no longer threaten stability. They refine it. If the self is no longer the center of knowing, what does it mean to understand at all?